I was told most people rebuild trust by getting an apology, a full confession, and a promise it will never happen again. That is not what rebuilds trust. Not even close. If you have been through this, you already know the apology came, the promises came, and somehow you still flinch every time their phone lights up on the counter. That flinch is not weakness. That flinch is data. And in the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through the 4 things that actually rebuild trust after emotional cheating, because almost none of them are what you have been told to do. And if you get even one of them backwards, you can spend 2 years working on it and end up further apart than the day you found out. Here is what almost nobody explains about emotional infidelity. It is not one betrayal, it is 2. The first betrayal is the one you found out about, the late-night texting, the emotional intimacy given to someone outside the relationship, the inside jokes and vulnerable conversations that should have belonged to you. But the second betrayal, the one that actually does the long-term damage, is quieter. It is the discovery that your own perception was wrong for months, sometimes years. You trusted your gut when it said something felt off, and then you were told you were imagining things, that you were being paranoid, that you needed to work on your insecurity. So when the truth finally surfaces, you are not just grieving the relationship you thought you had. You are grieving your own judgment. And that second wound is the one most couples never actually address, because they are so focused on relitigating the affair that they skip right past the fact that one partner now has a broken relationship with their own instincts. This matters because the entire process of rebuilding trust depends on repairing both wounds at the same time, not just the first one. Dr. Shirley Glass, one of the most respected researchers on infidelity, spent decades studying what she called walls and windows. In a healthy relationship, the wall goes up around the couple and the windows stay open between partners, full transparency, shared inner worlds, nothing hidden. What happens in emotional infidelity is that the wall and window flip. A window opens toward the other person, private jokes, private feelings, private closeness, and a wall goes up between the actual partners, secrecy, deflection, minimizing. Rebuilding trust is not about promising to never do it again. It is about physically rebuilding the architecture, closing that outside window, and rebuilding the wall around the relationship itself, brick by brick, in a way the hurt partner can actually see happening. So let's talk about what that looks like, because just be more honest is not a plan, it is a slogan, and slogans do not rebuild anything. The first thing that has to happen, and almost every couple skips this, is what therapists call full disclosure without minimizing. Not a full confession delivered once under pressure. A complete, consistent account that does not change every time a new detail gets uncovered. Here is why this matters more than people realize. Every time the story shifts, even slightly, even about something small, the hurt partner's nervous system resets back to 0. It is not about the size of the new detail. It is about what a shifting story proves, that they still cannot fully trust what they are being told. This is why so many people say the lying hurt worse than the affair itself. The affair was one event. The lying was months, sometimes years, of training someone not to trust their own perception. So if you are the partner who was unfaithful, the work is not one hard conversation and then moving on. The work is answering the same questions multiple times, without sighing, without getting defensive, without saying, "We already went through this." Because for the hurt partner, going through it again is not them being dramatic. It is them checking whether the ground is stable enough to stand on yet. The second thing, and this one surprises almost everyone, is that reassurance is not the same thing as repair, and giving too much of the wrong kind actually slows healing down. Most people think the way to fix this is constant reassurance. I love you. I would never do that again. You have nothing to worry about. But here's the problem. Words are cheap after trust has been broken, because words are exactly what broke it in the first place. Dr. John Gottman's research on repair after betrayal found that what actually rebuilds trust is not verbal reassurance. It is what he calls attunement, small, consistent, observable actions that match the words being said. If someone says, "You can trust me," but still turns their phone face down, still deletes messages out of habit, still gets vague when asked a direct question, the nervous system does not believe the sentence. It believes the behavior. This is why so many betrayed partners describe feeling crazy during the recovery process. They are being told everything is fine while their body is picking up on 100 tiny signals that do not match the words. Trust is rebuilt through the boring, unglamorous consistency of behavior lining up with language over and over, for longer than either person wants it to take. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable, because the third piece is the one nobody wants to hear. The hurt partner has to be allowed to grieve out loud, and the partner who broke trust has to be able to sit in that grief without fixing it, defending against it, or rushing it. This is the part where most relationships actually fail, not during the affair, during the aftermath. Because when the betrayed partner brings up the pain again, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, sometimes even a year later, the natural instinct of the other partner is to feel attacked. I already apologized. I thought we moved past this. Why are we still talking about this? And that response, even when it comes from exhaustion rather than malice, tells the hurt partner one very clear thing, that their pain has an expiration date and they are now inconveniencing the relationship by still feeling it. Dr. Sue Johnson, the creator of emotionally focused therapy, calls the original event an attachment injury, and she found that attachment injuries do not heal on a schedule. They heal when the injured partner feels the other person can finally, fully witness the pain without flinching away from it or trying to talk them out of it. That is the entire skill. Not fixing the pain, witnessing it, sitting in the room with it without needing it to be over. So what does witnessing actually sound like in practice? Because this is where people freeze up and say the wrong thing at exactly the wrong moment. If your partner brings up the affair again, months later, crying at 11 at night, for what feels like the 100th time, the instinct is to say something like, "We've been over this," or "What do you want me to do?" Both of those responses, even said gently, communicate that their feelings are now a burden. What actually moves the relationship forward is something closer to this. "I know this is still living in you. I'm not going anywhere while you feel it." No defense, no timeline, no subtle guilt trip about how hard this has been on you too. Just presence. That single shift from defending yourself to witnessing them is often the difference between a couple that heals and a couple that quietly falls apart 18 months later while telling everyone they worked through it. The fourth piece is the one that actually determines whether trust gets rebuilt for real or just gets performed for a few months until everyone gets tired. It is proactive transparency, not reactive transparency. Reactive transparency is answering questions when asked. Proactive transparency is volunteering information before it is asked for. This distinction matters more than almost anything else in this entire process, because reactive transparency still puts the entire burden of vigilance on the hurt partner. They have to keep asking, keep checking, keep playing detective, and every time they have to ask, it reinforces the exact dynamic that hurt them in the first place, them having to dig for the truth instead of being given it. Proactive transparency looks like mentioning a run-in with the person before being asked, sharing a conversation that felt slightly off before it becomes a secret, closing the loop before it opens rather than after. This is not about permanent surveillance or forever justifying your whereabouts. It is a temporary, intentional season of communication that slowly, deliberately, teaches the nervous system of the hurt partner that they no longer have to do the emotional labor of catching problems on their own. Here is something almost nobody says out loud about this entire process, and it might be the most important thing in this video. Trust does not come back as a single moment where everything suddenly feels okay again. It comes back the way scar tissue forms, slowly, unevenly, and it never looks exactly like the skin that was there before. Couples who make it through this successfully do not describe going back to how things were. They describe building something different, something that has more honesty in it than the relationship ever had before the betrayal, because the version of the relationship that existed before was, in some way, already missing the transparency that made the affair possible in the first place. This reframe matters because it takes the pressure off both people to fake a full return to normal. You are not rebuilding the old house. You are building a new one on the same land, and new construction always takes longer than everyone wants it to. Let me give you a real pattern that shows up again and again in couples who actually make it through this. In the first few months, the betrayed partner asks a lot of questions, sometimes the same ones repeatedly. The partner who broke trust answers consistently, without shifting the story, without getting defensive, without keeping score of how many times they've already explained themselves. Around month 4 or 5, something shifts. The questions get less frequent, not because the hurt partner has decided to move on out of nowhere, but because the consistency of the answers has actually started to register somewhere below conscious thought. The nervous system, not the mind, starts to relax first. Around month 8 or 9, there is usually a moment, often small, sometimes as simple as the betrayed partner not checking a phone they normally would have checked, where both people quietly notice that something has changed. That moment is not the finish line. It is the first real sign the new foundation is holding weight. And here is the part that separates couples who make it from couples who don't. The couples who make it through this stop measuring success by whether the hurt partner gets over it on some invisible schedule, and start measuring success by whether the relationship becomes a place where both people can be fully honest, including about the hard, ongoing feelings the betrayal left behind. The couples who don't make it are usually the ones where healing gets treated as a deadline instead of a process, where one partner starts to resent how long it's taking, and that resentment leaks out in small comments that quietly reopen the original wound. If you are the partner who was betrayed, here is what I want you to hear before you go. You are not broken for still feeling this months later. You are not asking for too much by wanting consistency instead of promises. Your instincts were right before, even when you were told they weren't, and rebuilding trust in a relationship starts with rebuilding trust in yourself, in what you notice, in what you feel, in what your gut has been telling you the whole time. And if you are the partner who broke that trust, the work is not proving your innocence going forward. It is proving your consistency, quietly, patiently, without needing credit for it, for as long as it takes for someone else's nervous system to finally believe you again. If this shifted something in how you're thinking about your own situation, drop the word rebuild in the comments below. I rate every one of them, and I want to know how many of you are actually sitting with this right now, instead of just watching it pass by. And before you go, there is one more piece of this you need to understand, because knowing how to rebuild trust means nothing if you can't tell the difference between a partner who is doing the real work and a partner who is only performing it to make the conversation stop. I made an entire video breaking down the 5 signs someone is faking remorse instead of feeling it. It's on your screen right now. Watch that one next, because it will change how you read everything that happens from here.